thank you all the participants for logging in and listening to some of the thoughts. And over the next 20 minutes or so, what we will do is that I will tell what are my thoughts from a vantage point, some of it technology, some of it non-technology, but essentially, provoking you to think, because what happens is that in times like this, we get into a mode which is called numbness. We just wait for things to happen, and many times, as we wait, whether our competitors, whether our peers, whether our own people, whether our own self, many times we find that they have gone in different directions than we thought they will go. So what I will do is that I have a small 10, 12 slide, presentation to articulate the thoughts, because this is a virtual summit where I must, and you must also respect each other's time. And from there, we will take it forward and see what kind of interaction is coming. So in order that we need to understand what exactly is happening, I think the best way is, as I think was told, today's thought process is that what is the business in the new normal? And first of all, as I told you, today's challenge is bringing IT values to business, business value to IT, and leadership value to both business and IT. So qualities of head and heart are more in demand in today's situation than ever before, because this is something which was written in our scriptures probably 5,000 years back. And the real man is actually a generic word for a real professional. A real professional is one which is described in this Sanskrit shloka, which goes like this: Patre tyagi gune ragi sambhivagi chabandhusu Shastre Bodha Rane Yodha Purusha Panchalakshana. What are the 5 symptoms of a true professionals? One is that in this time, wherever there is need, whether there is a need for knowledge, need for wealth, need for sharing, it must be given with more generousness than before. Indulging in virtues, ethics is more important, because when we were pushed to the wall, many times, whether it is IT leadership or business leadership, in my experience, what happens is that many of us, we try to cut corners, we try to do compromises, and we try to find out what are the shortcuts. But as this one says, indulging in virtues in difficult times is more important than probably in normal times. Shares with relatives. Relatives here is again a generic term, relative meaning team members, relative meaning stakeholders, relative meaning our partners. All these require sharing of knowledge, sharing of technology, because together we grow. And we must have a scientific temper. Remember, without experimentation, nothing has ever evolved. So learning the sciences and of course, having that fighting spirit. Never say die, or never say that enough is enough. So these 5 things I thought that I'll remind you right at the beginning. And now what we will discuss and we will provoke. First, a glimpse, because many of you must have learnt about it. Many of you must have thought about it. Many of you must have discussed about it. Many of you must have shared about it. What are these new normals? Normal is something around which we anchor our professional experience, whether it is IT, whether it is business, whether it is fund management, whether it is finance. We must know what are the risks, because as the basic of risk always tells us that why cars have brakes, not to stop the car, because the driver will have greater confidence in driving it at greater speeds. So knowing the risks and knowing the mitigations are very important in these areas, in these times. So we will try to learn a little more about what are the risks that are there. Then what are the defensive actions and what are the proactive actions? And of course, at the end, because I have been a BFSI sector leader, I have been in the Insurance Advisory Council of India, of Government of India, and I have been in a number of Reserve Bank of India committees. And, so from my own learnings, I'll try to share a few things. What exactly is the way forward? Now, first, what are the new normals that we are looking? First thing is that projections and extrapolations are not working today. Initially, when the COVID pandemic rolled out, it was told that probably 3-4 things will survive. One is collaborative technology, work from home technology. Other technologies will be rendered useless. Second thing that was told was that probably India will see 1 million deaths and probably 100 million or 50 million people who will be diagnosed with COVID positivity. Similarly, other projections were that there will be minimum 15% contraction in the economy. And if things go still worse, it could go to maybe 25% contraction. Even very respected journals like The Economist told that it will be at best a 90% economy. I remember the headlines of one of the main issues of Economist, because there are some globally respected magazines and platforms which I see. One of them is Economist, the other one is Project Syndicate, the other one is the Forbes magazine. So all of them, whatever projections they have given, if you look at the real situation as they have unfolded, right from the death rate to the curing rate to the impact of the economy, these have all proven to be at best tentative. What does it mean? It means that the normal process of taking a set of data and extrapolating it, whether through IT algorithms or through commonsensical extrapolation, are unlikely to hold good. Second one is that, already when we were into the pandemic, the major tussle between China and US with the arrest of the daughter of the Huawei founder started, and the suspicion that China kind of suppressed the pandemic and the global sufferings were accentuated because of that. Along with that, the other things like US influencing UK to ban 5G equipment from Chinese manufacturers, the Belt and Road initiatives where China is trying to give greater influence to its allies. The third one being that there are many European banks which are still bankrupt. So we are seeing world order and global trade are in a flux. Where from supplies will come? Who will set the rules? BFSI sector is a rule-based and trust-based and kind of leadership-based, because many of what we do in BFSI technology is driven based on proofs of concepts that we have seen elsewhere being taken in a smaller scale. We scale it up or we customize and we take it forward. So these are things which are suspect today. Next thing is that we are seeing adjustments happening unevenly. What we are seeing is that, let us say a bank has lent to MSME sector. Now MSME technology or technology for giving loans or collecting loans or tracking the borrower is generally given by the IT and digital wing as one or maximum two variants. Let us take a mom and pop store and a pushcart fellow who are doing MSME business. They are adjusting completely differently to both the pandemic, the new normal being that individualization will trump customization and mass and scalable digitization. Next thing that is there that I'm seeing is that boardrooms are increasingly getting suspicious about the exuberant technologies, whether it is machine learning, deep learning, or going into the Watsons of the world. So all the exotic technologies are fading, and there are market crashes which are happening because if we look at the beta of the markets, where what is the market response to volatile triggers, it is the market volatility is extremely unpredictable. Last but not the least is to understand that in the Indian scenario, how things are unfolding. Let us look at our GDP. Our GDP is 15% agriculture and allied, 30% from industry, and 55% from services. Now, if you look at 15% in agriculture contributing to the GDP and deploying nearly 40% of our people, similarly, industry contributing 30% and employing roughly 60%, because industry includes all other things like construction, like factories, and like small scale manufacturing. So the political clout of industry and allied and agriculture activities will be much more as compared to things like Bfsi sector, which are in the service sector. So the policy and government spending are likely to be more diverted towards industry and agriculture, and technology of the Bfsi sector has to necessarily orient itself. The new normal is that we were thinking that most of the wealth is urban centric, but in the new normal, if the wealth generation, the economic activity will go to the rural areas, because the engines of spending will shift from the corporate sector to the government sector, and the government sector, because of the political clout that is there in the rural and agriculture sector and in the industry sector, then probably our technology has to reorient, our digital initiative has to reorient towards the agriculture, rural, tier 3, tier 4 cities, and likewise. Now, one set of warning that I always give, this is the definition of a crisis, and crisis in turbulent times comes in large and uncontrollable scale. It comes with high velocity. Velocity cannot be predicted. Typically, it is high to very high. The fluctuation is very, very rapid. The transmission effect to other sectors of the enterprise. Clearly, if a company's income is hit, if a company's customer base is hit. I was the other day, I was attending a board meeting of one of the banks, and it was immediately told that, the front line, that is the collecting and the originating machinery for which technology has been designed, suddenly is deserting. So the technology for the front line had to be augmented to trace the bank's own collection agents rather than only originating and doing loaning. So look at the cascading effects. The transmission going to unknown areas cannot be ruled out. So similarly, the second thing that will happen is that the unclear patterns of evolution, as I told earlier, will render analytics almost impossible, and polarization of opinions and irrational demands. Somebody will come and tell that let us have cash for every subsidy that the government is announcing. There could be another demand that the banks should waive the complete interest for 6 months. Banks should also take a loss. So, because the entire system is in stress, don't get at all surprised, because these are things that I have culled. And similarly, probably whenever you are in IT or digital, the failures should be pronounced faster than they were in the past. So let us be prepared for that. So as I told, it will be volatile, it will be uncertain, it will be complex, and it will be ambiguous. Survival is not guaranteed. We will have to make all hard choices. And all of you, as I told in the beginning, are leaders. Not necessary that people who are in the boardroom or who are CTOs or who are deputy CTOs or who are CISOs, they are only leaders. All of you, irrespective of the position that you are in, you are leaders in family, you are leaders in your own small team, or as a team member. Many times team members are leaders. So a combined spirit and the ability to exploit the boundaries, because boundaries are the place where innovation take place. I always tell that, for example, let us take that retail payments. Today, telcos can make small retail payment, stores can make small retail payment, and banks can make it, small finance banks can make it, NBFCs can make it, even peer-to-peer can also happen. So wherever these boundaries cross each other, there the innovation happens. Wherever boundaries overlap with each other, maximum innovation happens, A, because of competition, B, because of survival, C, because they are incremental and cost effective. I have told already that core resilience must be maintained in a VUCA world, that is, wherever volatility, uncertainty, the core should be protected, ring-fenced, and taken forward. Now, the basic thing that we need to do is that, as you can see from this graph, respond, recover, and renew has to happen simultaneously. Respond is generally short term, recover is generally medium term, and renew is long term. But not any one should occupy your total mind space, or not any two should occupy your total mind space. So let us see. First is how to respond. Responding is keeping people safe, not health-wise, not just supplying them masks or supplying them, sanitizing liquid or maintaining social distance. Yes, that is important. But the other thing is that the collateral damage that is coming, the risk of non-employment, the financial risk combined with bullying risk, because leaders will generally get aggressive in terms of demanding from people very unreasonable kind of goals and other things. So during this period, IT leadership especially, because IT generally deals with more number of millennials as compared to any other vertical in the Bfsi industry. Second is essential function identification, whether for the bank when this was rolled out. I remember in the boardroom, we were discussing when the government thing came, and it discussed that the banks and financial institutions are the important intermediaries which must be kept intact. So during that period, it is a changing scenario where essential functions set. Banks are there for accepting deposits, giving loans, and lugging money from one place to other. But gradually, banks are required to maintain payment gateways. Banks must settle money for the various e-commerce to go on. And how do we accelerate new technology? That is also very important, because new technology, not necessarily that only hype technology should be put to the back seat. but new technology which is essential, like Trello, for example, or for that matter, project management software. How offsite project management software can be taken, and keep a set of temporary fixes ready so that any bleeding could be stopped. First aid need to be given to businesses through technology. Responding to any bleeding initiative from the competitor has to be collaboratively decided between IT and business. So business value of IT and people value of IT must work together. Other thing is that, don't wait for the NTP. NTP, those of you who are familiar with chemistry, I always tell in my speeches, it is called normal temperature and pressure. Oxygen or hydrogen behaves in a particular way in the NTP. Please do not wait for restarting your activities till things become normal, because as I told, this normal or the new normal keeps on changing. Of course, your hiring, budgeting, and supply chain needs to be renegotiated, and it should be prepared for multi-hop. It should be collaborative, and project management as a discipline was done commonsensically. In today's world, it needs to be done more aggressively. Now, coming to what is the leadership effort to do renewals? One is that, as I told, emerging patterns, the ability of the system, ability of the ecosystem, ability of the management to understand what are the early warning signal of emerging patterns. Because the cycle time of emerging patterns to come, do damage or do benefit to your system and disappear will shrink very, very substantially. And the ever-learning systems, while managing optical and tactical, how do you remain strategic? And strategic meaning always having the ability to go below the surface and do something which is very important, which is long-term. Strategy is generally long-term. And another thing that is very important is that, as commonly told, and I always articulate this, that strategy is something, unless it is percolated to the bottom, then culture eats strategy for breakfast. If the culture again is a misunderstood word. Culture has short-term culture and culture has long-term culture. Whether fellow feeling is a long-term thing or fellow feeling is a short-term thing depends on what is the situation that is playing out in our environment. So let us be sure that strategy is never lost sight of. What are the risks? Risks are that anytime a second wave of COVID could come, the social rejig that is happening or the ecosystem rejig. For example, my son's company has decided that they will pay 20,000 rupees each to the employees. And for the next 6 months, they will not hire any new office space. So by giving 20,000 per employee per month, cost is roughly 15,000. And if they save for 6 months, 90,000, then it goes to the bottom line. Now we will have to see that where this rejigging is happening. And if rejigging completely impacts a substantive or major part of your business model, then we will have to look to that. Then strategic response should not be numb. It should not be postponed. As I have told about US-China, Brexit is not helping it. Then cost versus strategy. Cost saving in difficult time will always come to the fore. But the cyber physical convergence that is happening, I think it is helping the cost saving, but the details of this has to be fleshed out and communicated. That where exactly still people are now missing. For example, the school system is missing the real touch. People, there is again, a global discussion that whenever students go to school, they are not just going to listen to the lecture which can be given based on the virtual atmosphere. They go to make friends. They go to run away from the house, from the parents, probably the rigors of the home atmosphere. They learn from each other. So where from, how these things will be imparted in this convergent world in which cyber and physical have come together remains to be seen. The other thing is that the hibernation of the banking, that is also is going to be prolonged. Banks will do probably the basics for a long time to come because there will be pressure. The medication that is required in the new normal for the colds, cups, and the small fevers that we will get probably during this new normal is that continuous stakeholder communication, whether it is employees, whether it is shareholders, whether it is suppliers, whether it is, many times I say that during difficult times, government and authorities like the Pollution Control Board, like the IT security guys, like the cyber security police, all these become very, very powerful. So proactive communication is required. Tech stacks and deliverables need to be reprioritized, and the futuristic rejigs needs to be kept on track. The other thing that I always tell the service sector is that when good times come, the pains of the bad time are quickly forgotten. So right now, banks are willing to renegotiate contracts with you, give you better interest rate, give you an interest holiday. Suppliers are willing that people will be delayed, and so they are willing to give you rate preferences. Similarly, buyers are also willing to source material from inside the country. So this is the right time to renegotiate your borrowing and supplying contracts. And enterprise architecture, which is people, process, technology, and governance, needs to be rejigged, because many people think architecture meaning IT architecture, how the networking equipment interact with the basic servers, or for that matter, the security apparatus. It is not so. Many times in my long experience at very senior levels in corporates, I think what we make a mistake is confusing IT architecture or digital architecture as a standalone architecture, which will take us through difficulty, leave alone during difficulty, during normal times also it will fail. So platform must be re-engineered, keeping in mind enterprise and technology architecture. Last is that what are the BFSI challenges? Because as IT leaders, all of you have to understand the pains of business in order that you provide IT in the appropriate doses. Because IT, I always say, is like the engineer, architect, or the plumber, or the electrician. The owner wants a light, owners want a faucet, the owner wants a bathroom at a particular place. We need to provide, but at the same time, we need to give professional advice that which is the best place and which is the best make and what is the best solution or which is the best combination that works. So these are the 5-6 challenges that is there before the management and the business in the BFSI sector. I'm sure all of you will debate how this will come to be taken as a collaborative thing. The first one is the asset quality, because asset quality will be under stress, and the asset liability management will be under stress. Whether it is credit card, whether it is insurance, whether it is NBFC, doesn't matter. Second thing is that cost and profitability will always be, because shareholders will be patient for some time. And once the shares started getting beaten up, then there is no end to it. There will be problem regarding treasury digitization. Probably it will go to the front end. If any one of you have more interest in this, please let me know. The public-private, most of the public sector entities will probably be required to do more onerous. So those of you who are working in public sector banks or public sector insurance companies are likely to be in a different paradigm for time to come. Data assurance and privacy, which is the trust factor on which the banking is built, or for that matter, insurance or credit method or NBFCs are built, these must be protected. And the new entities like the blockchain or the fintechs, which are taking advantage or are fighting for survival, are likely to challenge the existing things. So this is what I wanted to tell. I think I have stayed within the 25 minutes given to me. Those of you who are interested can follow me on the Twitter or on the YouTube, where I have a lot of material, learning material, and also visit my website. Thank you very much. Sri Lakshmi, I think you can open it for questions. We can take a couple of questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mahapatra, for a very valuable session. I'm sure your vision and guidance will continue to inspire the BFSI technology community. We have a question from Harshvardhan Mishra, who asks, what are your thoughts on customer service in pandemic?
This is a good question, because customer service, what happens is that many times we believe that customers remain unreasonable. I think customers have also lowered their expectation as compared to the pre-pandemic period. So the basic things, transparency, some of the things that always hold is that be transparent with the customer. I always give the example of the airline counters in an airport. One of the airline keeps on announcing that this aircraft is coming from this sector and this will operate in the other sector, and this is likely to, now it has started boarding, or now the aircraft is getting clean. So the passengers who are waiting are always assured that yes, things are on track, whereas the same thing might be happening, but a lack of communication or lack of continuous updating always confuses the customer. So one of the customer service, let us say somebody is coming for a loan, the stage at which the loan application is needs to be communicated much more frequently as compared to a normal time, and ditto for other services. So customer services being transparent, making the customers reduced expectation, meet your delivery standards, and frequent communication.
Thank you, Mr. Mahapatra. So we have another question from Gaurav Shah, who asks, what's your outlook of Indian economy in terms of regaining economic stability?
Okay, I think this question is an opt. That's why I didn't touch. I initially, when I was addressing webinars, I was always asked this, whether it will be a V-shaped recovery, whether it will be a U-shaped recovery, or it will be a bathtub recovery, or it will be a W-shaped recovery. Now, as I told right at the beginning, what we are seeing today is that various sectors are behaving unevenly. Retail sector, for example, has shown a V-shaped recovery. Rapid recovery today, most of the retail apparel manufacturers, retail white good manufacturers, their factories are running at full capacity. So there is a V-shaped recovery. Now, there is some kind of a U-shaped recovery, because people told that hotel and hospitality industry will suffer. But majority of the hotels have been now hired as COVID rehabilitation centers or COVID quarantine centers. So they are making some amount of money. So there is probably a U-shaped recovery. There are some which had come up and which are again going down, like, for example, some of the NBFCs which are scattering to the microfinance sector. There we may see a rapid up and down, like a W-shaped recovery. So as I told you, there is no one size fits all for Indian economy, for that matter, any sector of global economy, because global factors, global supply chains, the fight between US and China, the Brexit, the petroleum price, the discovery of a vaccine, all these will define how a particular sector will emerge. But for sure, the recovery will be faster and money will be spent more in the rural and tier 3, tier 4 areas, agri and employment oriented industries.